The crimson sunset painted the Texas sky as Emma Vaughan stood on the porch of her father's sprawling ranch, her honey-colored hair whipping across her face in the warm breeze of 1871. She watched the horizon with restless eyes, feeling the familiar ache of confinement that had grown stronger with each passing day since her 21st birthday last spring. The Vaughan Ranch, one of the largest cattle operations in Brewster County, Texas, stretched across 5,000 acres of rugged terrain near the small settlement of Wallace. Samuel Vaughan had built his empire through sweat and determination, transforming a modest plot into a flourishing business that supplied beef to growing towns throughout the territory. His success had come at a price, however, paid in blood during the frequent raids and conflicts with the Apache tribes who claimed ancestral rights to the land. Emma's mother had died of fever when she was 12, leaving her to grow up under her father's stern but loving care. Samuel had taught his daughter everything about ranch life: how to ride, rope, and even shoot, though he insisted she maintain the proper demeanor of a lady whenever visitors came calling. What he couldn't teach her was contentment with the limited horizons afforded to women in this untamed corner of the West. "Emma, come help with supper," called Martha, their housekeeper, from the doorway. "Your father will be back soon with the new scout." Emma sighed and turned toward the house. "New scout? Some Apache fellow your father hired to help track those rustlers who have been stealing cattle. Says he knows the territory better than anybody." Martha shook her head disapprovingly. "Your father's mad to trust one of them, if you ask me, but he says this one's different. Worked for the army at Fort Davis before." Emma's interest was piqued. Her father rarely employed native men, sharing the prevailing distrust most settlers harbored. If he'd hired an Apache scout, the rustling problem must have grown more serious than she realized. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew her attention back to the yard. Samuel Vaughan, tall and imposing at 53 with his silver-streaked dark hair and weathered face, rode in alongside a lean figure on a pinto horse. Emma watched as they dismounted, her curiosity growing as she studied the stranger. He stood nearly as tall as her father, but moved with a silent grace that made Samuel's confident stride seem clumsy by comparison. His copper skin gleamed in the fading light, his long black hair tied back with a strip of leather. He wore buckskin pants and a cotton shirt that blended both Apache and white man's clothing styles, with a knife sheathed at his belt and a Winchester rifle in his saddle holster. "Emma," her father called, waving her over. "Come meet Swift Hawk. He'll be helping us track those thieves." Emma approached, conscious of the intense gaze that met hers. The man's eyes were so dark they appeared black in the dying light, but there was something in them: intelligence, wariness, and something else she couldn't name that made her pulse quicken. "Mr. Swift Hawk," she said with a polite nod. A hint of amusement crossed his face. "Just Swift Hawk," he replied, his voice deep and surprisingly smooth with only the slightest accent. "Among my people I am Daxi. It means swift." "Daxi," Emma repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. "He speaks better English than half the cowhands," Samuel explained. "Learned at the mission school before serving as a scout for the cavalry. Knows every inch of territory between here and the Chizos Mountains." Swift Hawk's expression revealed nothing, but Emma sensed there was more to his story than her father knew or cared to acknowledge. "You must be tired from your journey," she said. "Martha has prepared supper." "Swift Hawk will eat with the men," her father interjected. "Jackson's setting him up in the scout's cabin. He starts work at dawn tomorrow." Emma felt a flash of irritation at her father's dismissive tone but hid it behind a practiced smile. "Of course. Good evening, then." As she turned to go, Swift Hawk spoke again. "Miss Vaughan." She looked back, meeting those unfathomable eyes. "Thank you for the welcome," he said simply. Something in his gaze, some unexpected depth of feeling, caught her off guard. Emma nodded and hurried back to the house, unsettled by her reaction to this stranger. She'd met plenty of men, cowboys, ranchers, even army officers, but none had affected her quite this way with just a look. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She stood by her window, gazing at the sliver of moon rising above the distant mountains. A movement near the corrals caught her eye. Swift Hawk, his silhouette unmistakable, walking alone in the darkness. He stopped and looked up at the same moon she watched, and for a moment, despite the distance between them, she felt an inexplicable connection. Morning came with a flurry of activity as the ranch hands prepared for the day's work. Emma finished her chores early and slipped out to the stables, where she saddled her Palomino mare, Sunny. Her father didn't approve of her riding alone, but he was occupied with the cattle drive preparations and wouldn't notice her absence for a few hours. She rode toward her favorite spot, a small spring-fed pool tucked away in a grove of cottonwoods. The water was cool and clear, a rare treasure in this arid landscape. Emma dismounted and let Sunny drink while she settled on a flat rock, pulling out the book of poetry she'd hidden in her saddlebag. The crack of a twig made her head snap up. Swift Hawk stood at the edge of the clearing, leading his pinto. His expression showed mild surprise. "Miss Vaughan," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "I did not expect anyone here." Emma quickly tucked her book away. "This is my favorite place on the ranch," she said, trying to sound composed despite her racing heart. "Do you need the water? I can leave." "The water is for all," he replied, leading his horse to the opposite side of the pool. "Your father sent me to scout the eastern boundary." "For the rustlers," he nodded, kneeling to examine something on the ground that Emma couldn't see. "3 men. They have been watching your ranch for days." "How can you tell that?" She couldn't help her curiosity. Swift Hawk looked up, studying her face as if assessing whether she truly wanted to know or was merely being polite. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him. "Come, I will show you." Emma hesitated only briefly before joining him. He pointed to markings in the soil that looked like nothing special to her eyes. "Here." A man stood watching. "See how the earth is compressed differently? He shifted his weight many times. He was here long. And here," he moved a few feet away. Another man joined him. They smoked. He held up a small cigar butt. "White man's tobacco." "That's amazing," Emma said with genuine admiration. "Could you teach me to read sign like that?" Surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by that same inscrutable expression. "Your father would not approve." "My father doesn't need to know everything I learn," she replied, a hint of defiance in her voice. For the first time, she saw a genuine smile transform his serious face. It was brief but dazzling, like lightning illuminating a night sky. "Perhaps," was all he said, but it felt like a promise. Over the next few weeks, Emma contrived to cross paths with Swift Hawk whenever possible. She discovered he worked primarily alone, tracking not only the rustlers but also monitoring the ranch's extensive boundaries and water sources. Her father trusted his reports implicitly, but kept his interactions with the Apache scouts strictly business. Emma learned that Swift Hawk, or Daxi, as she'd begun to call him when they were alone, was 26 and had been educated at a mission before the war. His mother was Apache, his father a Mexican trader who had lived among the tribe. He'd scouted for the army until witnessing a massacre of women and children that had sickened him. After that, he'd worked independently, using his skills to survive in the narrow space between two worlds that regarded him with suspicion. Their conversations were cautious at first, but Emma's genuine interest in his knowledge gradually broke down his reserve. He showed her how to identify animal tracks, read weather signs in the clouds, and find water in seemingly barren landscapes. She shared her books with him and discovered he had a keen mind and thoughtful opinions on everything they discussed. These meetings remained their secret, snatched in moments when Emma could slip away unnoticed. She knew what would happen if her father discovered them. Samuel Vaughan might respect Swift Hawk's abilities, but he would never condone his daughter spending time alone with any man, especially not an Apache. One hot afternoon in late July, Emma rode to their usual meeting place carrying a package wrapped in brown paper. Swift Hawk was already there, kneeling by the pool and studying something in the water. He looked up as she approached, his customary guardedness softening at the sight of her. "What do you have there?" he asked as she dismounted. Emma handed him the package with nervous anticipation. "Open it." Inside was a journal bound in soft leather with a pencil tucked into the binding. "I noticed you drawing maps in the dirt," she explained. "I thought you might like something more permanent." He ran his fingers over the blank pages, his expression unreadable. Emma worried she'd offended him somehow. "If you don't want it, no one has given me a gift since my mother died," he said quietly. "Thank you, Emma." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with fear. "You're welcome, Daxi." They sat together beside the pool, closer than usual. Emma watched as he opened the journal and began to sketch the landscape around them with surprising skill, his strong hands moving confidently across the paper. "You draw beautifully," she said. "My mother taught me." She said drawing was another way of remembering. "What do you remember most about her?" Emma asked gently. He paused, pencil hovering over the page. "Her stories. The way she explained how all things are connected, the sky and earth, the animals and people, the past and present." He looked up at the vast blue expanse above them. "She would say we are all part of one great circle." Emma followed his gaze upward. "That's beautiful." "What do you remember of your mother?" he asked, her voice. "She used to sing while she worked," Emma said, surprised at how easily the memory came. "And her hands, they were always busy, but so gentle. She taught me to make bread to sew, to braid my hair." She smiled sadly. "Father never speaks of her now. Perhaps it hurts him too much. Perhaps. But sometimes I think forgetting hurts more than remembering." Daxi nodded, understanding in his eyes. They sat in companionable silence as he continued drawing. Emma watched his profile, admiring the strong line of his jaw, the high cheekbones, the intensity of his concentration. Something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in her chest. When he finished the sketch and showed it to her, Emma gasped. He had captured not only the landscape but also her, sitting beside the pool with her face upturned to the sky, looking more beautiful and free than she had ever seen herself. "Is that how you see me?" she whispered. "It is how you are," he replied simply. Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment Emma thought he might touch her. Instead, he gently closed the journal. "We should return. Your father will be looking for you." The spell broken, Emma nodded and stood. As they prepared to leave, Daxi hesitated, then spoke in a low voice. "Emma, we must be careful if your father discovers these meetings." "I know," she said, "but I don't want to stop. Nor do I. His admission seemed to cost him something, but I will not bring trouble to you." "Then we'll continue to be careful," she insisted. As summer progressed toward fall, their meetings grew more frequent, and their conversations deeper. Emma shared her dreams of seeing the world beyond the ranch, of studying and perhaps even writing books someday. Daxi told her about his people's traditions, their struggles, and his own uncertain place between cultures. The attraction between them grew stronger, though both carefully maintained a respectful distance. One September evening, Emma sat on the porch after supper, watching a thunderstorm build over the distant mountains. Her father settled into the chair beside her, lighting his pipe. "You've been distracted lately," Samuel observed. "Something on your mind, daughter?" Emma tensed, but kept her expression neutral. "Just restless, I suppose." He puffed thoughtfully. "Martha mentioned you've been riding out alone most days." "I enjoy the solitude," she said carefully. "It gives me time to think." "These aren't safe times for a young woman to be wandering alone, Emma. Those rustlers are still out there, even with Swift Hawk tracking them." At the mention of Daxy's name, Emma fought to keep her face from betraying her. "Has he made any progress?" "Some. He's convinced they are part of the Yancey gang from over in Presidio County. Says they're watching the ranch, planning something bigger than just stealing a few head of cattle." Samuel frowned. "He's a strange one, that Indian. Keeps to himself mostly. The men don't know what to make of him." "He seems capable," Emma said neutrally. "That he is. Best tracker I've ever seen. Just wish I could figure out what's going on behind those eyes of his." He tapped his pipe against the porch rail. "Evan Parker rode over yesterday, asked about you." Emma suppressed a groan. Evan Parker was the son of a neighboring rancher, known more for his father's money than any personal qualities. "I hope you told him I was indisposed." "He's a good match, Emma. Strong family, good prospects. You're 21 now, time you started thinking about your future." "My future doesn't include Evan Parker," Emma said firmly. Samuel sighed. "You can't stay on this ranch forever, girl, and I won't be around to protect you always." "I don't need protection, Father. I need freedom." The conversation ended there, but Emma knew it wasn't over. Her father had been patient with her independence so far, but his expectations were clear. She would marry someone like Evan Parker and settle into the life of a rancher's wife. The thought filled her with dread. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Two of the ranch hands rode in at dawn, breathless with urgency. "Mr. Vaughan, cattle missing from the north pasture, at least 30 head." Samuel immediately ordered the men to prepare for pursuit. Emma watched from the porch as rifles were checked and horses saddled. "Where's Swift Hawk?" her father demanded. "Ain't seen him since yesterday," said Jackson, the foreman. "He rode out to check that boundary line." A cold fear gripped Emma's heart. What if something had happened to Daxy? Or worse, what if the men suspected him of involvement? "Maybe he's in on it," muttered one of the newer hands, voicing her worst fear. "Convenient he's gone when the cattle disappear." "Shut your mouth, Peters," Samuel snapped. "Swift Hawk's loyalty isn't in question. If he's not here, he's probably already tracking them." Relief washed over Emma, grateful for her father's defense of Daxy. As the men prepared to ride out, she approached her father. "I want to come with you." "Absolutely not," Samuel said firmly. "This could be dangerous." "I'm the best rider next to you," she argued. "And I know the north pasture better than most of the men." "Emma, please, father. I can't just sit here waiting." Samuel studied his daughter's determined face, recognizing the stubborn set of her jaw that mirrored his own. "You stay with me at all times. At the first sign of trouble, you ride back here as fast as Sonny can carry you." "Understood." Emma nodded, hurrying to saddle her horse before he could change his mind. Within minutes, they were riding north, following the trail of the stolen cattle. The signs were clear even to Emma's untrained eye: trampled grass, disturbed earth, broken branches. They had ridden for about 2 hours when they spotted a solitary figure on horseback approaching rapidly. Emma's heart leaped as she recognized Swift Hawk, and she had to force herself not to ride ahead to meet him. He reined in before Samuel. "I found them," he reported without preamble. 5 men camped in the Box Canyon near Cottonwood Creek. They have your cattle and more besides. Looks like they hit the Carson place too." "How many head total?" Samuel asked. "About 60. They're preparing to move them north, probably to sell in New Mexico territory." "Are they armed?" Swift Hawk's expression was grim. "Heavily. I recognize 2 of them Yancey brothers. There's a price on both their heads." Samuel considered this information, then turned to his men. "This isn't just about getting our cattle back. These are dangerous men." He addressed the youngest hand. "Cooper, ride back to Wallace and fetch the sheriff. Tell him to bring deputies." "That will take too long," Swift Hawk said. "They plan to move the cattle at noon." Samuel checked his pocket watch. "That's less than 2 hours from now." He looked at his dozen men, then at his daughter with concern. "Emma, go back with Cooper." "No," she said firmly. "I'm staying with you as agreed. This is different. These men are killers." "All the more reason you need every person you have," she argued. "I can stay back with the horses when you confront them." After a tense moment, Samuel relented. "Fine, but you do exactly as I say." Swift Hawk had been watching this exchange with an unreadable expression. When his eyes met Emma's, she saw both admiration and worry in their depths. He quickly outlined his plan to Samuel: approach the canyon from different directions, surround the rustlers before they realized what was happening. The men spread out, circling around to the positions Swift Hawk indicated. Emma remained with her father and 3 of the hands, approaching from the south, while the Apache scout led the others to block the canyon's narrow entrance. As they neared the canyon, Samuel ordered Emma to stay back with the horses, concealed in a stand of scrub oak. Though frustrated, she obeyed, watching anxiously as her father and the others crept forward on foot, rifles ready. The next few minutes were a blur of shouts and gunfire. Emma saw her father and the ranch hands taking cover behind rocks, exchanging shots with unseen figures in the canyon. She strained to spot Swift Hawk among the chaos, but couldn't see him. Then a movement to her right caught her attention: a man with a rifle circling wide around the firefight, positioning himself on a ledge above where her father crouched. Emma realized with horror that he was about to ambush Samuel from above. Without thinking, she grabbed her father's spare rifle from his saddle holster and took aim. The rifle kicked hard against her shoulder as she fired, and the man on the ledge jerked backward, his shot going wild. Emma's hands trembled as she lowered the rifle, scarcely believing what she'd done. The gunfire in the canyon intensified, then gradually fell silent. Emma waited, heart pounding, until she heard her father's voice calling the all clear. She emerged shakily from her hiding place, leading the horses toward the canyon entrance. The scene that greeted her was chaotic but victorious. 3 rustlers lay dead or wounded, while 2 others sat with their hands bound, guarded by the ranch hands. The stolen cattle milled about nervously in the canyon, but Emma saw none of this clearly. Her eyes sought only one figure. Swift Hawk stood beside her father, a bloodied bandana wrapped around his upper arm. Relief flooded through Emma at the sight of him alive, though injured. "Emma," Samuel called when he spotted her. "I told you to stay hidden." "She saved your life, Mr. Vaughan," said Jackson soberly. "That fella up there would have had you dead to rights if she hadn't shot him." Samuel turned to look at the ledge, then back at his daughter with astonishment. "You fired that shot," Emma nodded, still clutching the rifle. "I couldn't let him shoot you, father." For a moment Samuel seemed at a loss for words, then he strode over and embraced her fiercely. "My brave girl," he murmured. "Your mother would be proud." Over her father's shoulder, Emma's eyes met Swift Hawk's. His face showed a complex mixture of emotions: pride, concern, and something deeper that made her heart race. In that moment of shared danger and relief, something unspoken passed between them, something neither could deny any longer. The next few hours were consumed with practical matters tending to wounds, securing the prisoners, and preparing to drive the recovered cattle back to the ranch. The sheriff and his deputies arrived as they were finishing, taking charge of the rustlers and congratulating Samuel on the successful operation. Emma noticed Swift Hawk standing apart from the others, rewrapping the bandage on his arm. She approached with a canteen of fresh water. "Let me help," she said quietly, taking the bandana from his hands. He allowed her to clean and rebind the wound, a bullet graze that looked painful but not serious. They were partially concealed from the others by his horse, affording a rare moment of privacy. "That was a remarkable shot," he said softly. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My father taught me," she replied, focusing on her task. "Though I've never shot at a person before. It takes courage to pull the trigger when a life hangs in the balance." His hand covered hers briefly. "You have a warrior's heart, Emma Vaughan." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "I was so afraid when I heard the gunfire I couldn't see you." Her voice faltered. "I am here," he said simply. Something in his tone made her breath catch. They stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, could see the pulse beating in his throat. "Daxi, Emma." Her father's voice broke the moment. "We're heading back." Swift Hawk stepped away, his expression closing off. "You should go. Your father needs you." Emma reluctantly moved toward her waiting horse, glancing back to see Swift Hawk mounting his pinto, his face once again unreadable. The journey back to the ranch was slow with the recovered cattle, but Emma barely noticed the passing time. Her mind replayed the events of the day, the fear, the violence, and most of all, that charged moment with Daxi. Something had changed between them, something that couldn't be ignored any longer. By the time they reached the ranch, night had fallen. The men saw to the cattle while Samuel insisted Emma go inside to rest. She obeyed, but sleep eluded her. When the house had grown quiet, she slipped out onto the porch, restless and conflicted. A figure stood by the corral's Swift Hawk, his silhouette unmistakable in the moonlight. Before she could reconsider, Emma walked toward him, drawn by a force stronger than caution. He turned at her approach, unsurprised, as if he had been waiting for her. "You should be resting," he said softly. "I couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts." He nodded in understanding. "Today was difficult." "Not just today." Emma gathered her courage. "Daxi, what is happening between us?" He was silent for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with restrained emotion. "Something that cannot be. You know this as well as I do." "Why not?" "Look at me, Emma," he said with sudden intensity. "Look at what I am. A half-blood who belongs nowhere. Not Apache enough for my mother's people, not white enough for yours. What future could there be for us?" "I don't care about any of that," she insisted. "Your father would care. This ranch is his life's work, his legacy to you. Would you throw that away? And for what? To be shunned by both worlds, to watch our children suffer the same fate." Emma flinched at the harsh reality in his words but didn't back down. "Is that all you see when you look at me?" "Complications and impossibilities." Swift Hawk stepped closer, close enough that she could see the conflict in his eyes. "No," he said hoarsely. "When I look at you, I see everything I have ever wanted and everything I cannot have. You are the sky to my earth, Emma, vast and beautiful and forever beyond my reach." The poetry of his words stole her breath. "That's not true," she whispered. "I'm right here. For now, but tomorrow or the next day or the day after that, reality will come between us. Your father has plans for you, a suitable husband, a life that does not include a man like me." "Those are his plans, not mine," Emma said fiercely. "I make my own choices. Do you?" His voice softened. "Could you really choose a life of hardship and prejudice? Think carefully, Emma. Once such a choice is made, there may be no going back. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps made them both stiffen and step apart. Jackson appeared, nodding to them both. "Mr. Vaughan's looking for you," he told Swift Hawk. "Wants to discuss payment for the rustlers." "Thank you," Swift Hawk replied evenly. "I will find him." Jackson glanced between them with mild curiosity before walking away. When he was gone, Swift Hawk turned back to Emma. "Think about what I have said, please." His voice was gentle but firm. "Good night, Miss Vaughan." He walked away, leaving Emma standing alone in the moonlight, her heart torn between the wisdom in his words and the undeniable pull she felt toward him. The next week passed in a strange limbo. Samuel Vaughan, impressed by Swift Hawk's role in recovering the cattle, offered him a permanent position on the ranch. To Emma's mixed relief and anxiety, he accepted. This meant seeing him daily, often at a distance, as he worked with the ranch hands or consulted with her father. Their private meetings at the pool ceased. Whether out of caution after their midnight conversation or because he truly wanted distance, Swift Hawk seemed to be deliberately avoiding being alone with her. Emma respected his decision, even as it pained her. Perhaps he was right, perhaps acknowledging their feelings would only lead to heartache for both of them. Then came the invitation to the harvest dance in Wallace. Such gatherings were rare opportunities for the scattered ranch families to socialize, and Samuel insisted Emma attend. She suspected his motives included introducing her to eligible bachelors, but she agreed without argument, welcoming any distraction from her troubled thoughts. The evening of the dance arrived, and Emma wore her best dress, a sky-blue creation that her father had ordered all the way from San Antonio. Martha arranged her hair in an elegant style adorned with a single blue ribbon. "You look just like your mother," Samuel said gruffly when she came downstairs. "She would be so proud of the woman you've become." The town hall had been transformed with lanterns and autumn decorations. Nearly everyone from the surrounding ranches had come, dressed in their finest clothes. Emma endured introductions to several young men, danced when asked, and made polite conversation, all while feeling strangely detached from the festivities. As the evening progressed, she stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The night was cool, the sky ablaze with stars. She wandered a little way from the hall, seeking a moment of solitude. "You should not be out here alone," came a familiar voice from the shadows. Emma turned to see Swift Hawk emerging from beside a hitching post. He wore clean dark pants and a white shirt, clothes she'd never seen him in before, but his hair remained tied back in its customary style. "What are you doing here?" she asked, surprised and pleased. "Your father asked me to accompany the ranch hands." He was concerned about security after the trouble with the rustlers. He remained a respectful distance away, but his eyes took in her appearance with undisguised appreciation. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," she said, suddenly shy. "I didn't see you inside. I stayed near the door. Such gatherings are not comfortable for me." Emma understood. Even dressed as he was, his presence would have drawn stares and whispers. "It's not particularly comfortable for me either," she admitted. "All those people watching, judging." "The young men seemed eager for your attention," he observed neutrally. "Not the attention I want," she replied, meeting his gaze meaningfully. Swift Hawk took a step closer, then stopped himself. "Emma, we agreed." "No, you decided." "I never agreed to anything." She closed the distance between them. "I've thought about everything you said, Daxie, about the difficulties, the prejudice, the hardships, and I still feel the same. It would be selfish of me to what? To care for me, to allow me to care for you." Emma's frustration broke through. "Isn't that my choice to make? Or do you think me too weak to know my own mind?" His eyes flashed. "I have never thought you weak, quite the opposite." "Then stop protecting me from myself," she said softly. I know what I want." For a long moment he said nothing, his face a battleground of emotions. Then, with deliberate slowness, he raised his hand to her face, his fingertips barely grazing her cheek. It was their first touch that wasn't related to necessity or courtesy, and Emma felt it like fire against her skin. "You are so young," he murmured, "so full of hope." "Is hope such a bad thing to have?" Before he could answer, the door of the town hall opened, spilling light and music into the darkness. Emma stepped back instinctively and Swift Hawk withdrew into the shadows. "Emma, you out here." It was Evan Parker, his voice slightly slurred from drink. "Your father's looking for you." "I'll be right there," she called, her heart hammering. She turned back to where Swift Hawk had been, but he had vanished as completely as if he'd never been there at all. Emma returned to the dance, her mind and heart in turmoil. That brief touch had confirmed everything she'd been feeling. Whatever obstacles stood between them, whatever hardships might lie ahead, she knew with certainty that her feelings for Daxi were real and profound. The ride back to the ranch that night was subdued. Emma sat beside her father in the wagon, listening to the ranch hands singing drunkenly behind them. She searched the darkness for Swift Hawk but couldn't spot him among the riders. "You were quiet tonight," Samuel observed. "Didn't seem to take to any of those young fellas." "They were very nice," Emma said diplomatically. "But not nice enough, eh?" he chuckled. "Your mother was the same way. Turned down every suitable prospect until I came along, and I was hardly suitable back then, just a robin cowboy with big dreams." Emma glanced at him, surprised by this rare glimpse into her parents' past. "How did you know she was the one?" Samuel was silent for a moment, the reins loose in his hands as the horses plodded along the familiar road. "The world looked different when she was near," he said finally. "Brighter, more possible, like anything could happen." He cleared his throat. "Course, her father hated me. Thought his daughter deserved better than some saddle tramp with no prospects. What did you do?" Proved him wrong. Samuel smiled at the memory. "Worked harder than any man had a right to, saved every penny, bought our first 100 acres. When I went back to ask for her hand proper, I had something real to offer." Emma considered this. "And if you hadn't been able to buy land, if all you'd had was yourself to offer, she would have had me anyway," he said with certainty. "That's the kind of woman your mother was. Saw the truth of a person, not just their circumstances." He glanced at his daughter curiously. "Why all these questions?" "Just thinking about the future," she said vaguely. The next morning brought news that drove all other concerns temporarily from Emma's mind. A telegram had arrived from Wallace Apache raiders had attacked a ranch 20 miles east, killing 2 men and stealing horses and cattle. The surviving ranch hands claimed the raiding party was from the Mescalero band that occasionally came down from the mountains. The news spread rapidly, stirring up old fears and prejudices. Several neighboring ranchers rode to the Vaughan place to discuss forming a protective association. Emma listened from the kitchen doorway as the men talked in the main room, their voices growing louder and more belligerent. "We ought to send a message," declared Harold Parker, Evan's father. "Ride up there and show them what happens when they attack honest folk." "And kill how many innocent people in the process," Samuel countered. "We don't even know for certain which band was responsible." "An Indian's an Indian," spat another rancher. "Speaking of which, Vaughan, you still keeping that Apache scout? Seems mighty coincidental, this raid happening with him knowing all our defenses." Emma's hands clenched into fists as she waited for her father's response. "Swift Hawk has proven his loyalty a dozen times over," Samuel said firmly. "I won't hear that kind of talk in my house." "Your house, your rules," Parker conceded with poor grace. "But mark my words, you can't trust any of them, not when their own kind come calling." The meeting broke up without consensus, though several of the ranchers seemed determined to organize some kind of retaliatory action. When they had gone, Emma found her father on the porch, his expression troubled. "You did the right thing defending Swift Hawk," she said. Samuel nodded, lighting his pipe. "He's earned that much and more. But Parker wasn't entirely wrong, Emma. Things are going to get complicated around here. People will be looking for someone to blame, and Swift Hawk is an easy target. That's not fair. Fair has nothing to do with it. That's just how people are." He puffed on his pipe. "I've sent him to check our northern boundary. Thought it best to get him out of sight for a few days until tempers cool." Emma felt a pang of worry. Alone. What if someone decides he's a convenient scapegoat? "He can take care of himself better than most," Samuel assured her. "And he knows the dangers. He'll stay clear of trouble." But trouble, it seemed, was not so easily avoided. 2 days later, a group of armed men rode onto the ranch, led by Harold Parker. They demanded to know Swift Hawk's whereabouts, claiming they had evidence linking him to the raid. Samuel met them in the yard, rifle in hand. "What evidence?" he demanded. "Tracks matching his horse," Parker claimed. "And Ben Wilson swears he saw an Indian fitting his description scouting the Anderson place the day before the raid." "That's ridiculous," Emma interjected, joining her father despite his warning glance. "Swift Hawk was here on the ranch that day. I saw him myself." Parker eyed her skeptically. "With respect, Miss Vaughan, your word alone isn't enough. Not when good men have died." "Then take mine along with hers," Samuel said coldly. "Swift Hawk works for me. He follows my orders. He was nowhere near the Anderson ranch." "Then you won't mind if we wait here for him to return," Parker pressed. "If he's innocent, he has nothing to fear from a few questions." The standoff might have escalated if Jackson hadn't ridden in at that moment, his horse lathered with exertion. "Mr. Vaughan." "Riders coming looks like the sheriff and a cavalry detachment." Indeed, a cloud of dust on the horizon resolved into a group of horsemen approaching rapidly. Sheriff Wilson rode at the front alongside a cavalry officer, with a dozen troopers behind them. The newcomers reined in before the assembled ranchers. The officer, a young lieutenant, dismounted and approached Samuel. "Mr. Vaughan, I'm Lieutenant James Miller, Fort Davis. We're investigating the raid on the Anderson ranch. What brings you to my property, Lieutenant?" Samuel asked cautiously. "Information that your Apache scout might have knowledge of the raiders' movements." Miller's tone was professional but not accusatory. "The Army would appreciate his assistance in tracking them." Before Samuel could respond, Parker interjected, "Assistance? He should be arrested. We have evidence. You have rumors and fear, Mr. Parker," the sheriff cut in. "The lieutenant here has actual evidence from the raid site, evidence that suggests these weren't local Apache at all." This revelation caused a murmur among the ranchers. "What do you mean?" Samuel asked. "The tracks, the pattern of attack, our experts think these might be Comanche raiders from up north," Miller explained. "They sometimes disguise their raids to look like local tribes' work. Creates division, makes our job harder." "Convenient theory," Parker scoffed. "Based on evidence, not prejudice," Miller replied firmly. "Now is your scout available, Mr. Vaughan? His expertise would be valuable." "He's checking our northern boundary," Samuel said. "Due back tomorrow." "We'll wait then." The lieutenant turned to his men. "Make camp by the creek, Sergeant. Rotation of guards through the night." As the situation diffused, Emma felt relief mixed with growing concern. Swift Hawk would be riding into a complicated situation, with both hostility and official interest awaiting him. She needed to warn him somehow, but how could she reach him without raising suspicions? The answer came from an unexpected source. As the ranchers dispersed and the soldiers established their camp, Martha approached Emma in the kitchen. "That Apache boy saved your father's life," she said without preamble. "Now he might need someone to save his." Emma looked at the older woman in surprise. "What are you suggesting?" Martha glanced toward the door to ensure their privacy. "He always comes back through the East Ravine. Takes that game trail that runs along the ridge. If someone happened to ride out to check on the East pasture herd this evening, they might cross paths with him." "Martha, don't you Martha me," the housekeeper said firmly. "I've watched you two moon over each other for months. Not my place to approve or disapprove, but I won't stand by while a good man walks into a trap, no matter what color his skin is." Emma impulsively hugged the older woman. "Thank you. Just be careful," Martha cautioned, "and be back before your father notices you're gone." As dusk approached, Emma saddled Sonny and rode out, telling Jackson she wanted to check on a pregnant mare in the East pasture. Once out of sight of the ranch house, she urged her horse into a gallop toward the ravine Martha had mentioned. The game trail was narrow and difficult to follow in the fading light. Emma rode cautiously, scanning the rocky terrain for any sign of swift hawk. The sun had nearly set when she heard the soft fall of hooves on the path ahead. She rounded a bend to find herself face to face with him. His hand dropped instinctively to his knife before recognition dawned. "Emma, what are you doing out here alone?" Quickly, she explained the situation at the ranch Parker's accusations, the cavalry's arrival, their request for his tracking skills. Swift Hawk listened intently, his expression growing grave. "This complicates matters," he said when she finished. "If the raiders are indeed Comanche, they are likely still in the territory." "You don't have to go back," Emma said impulsively. "We could," she stopped, suddenly aware of what she had been about to suggest. He studied her face in the deepening twilight. "We could what, Emma? Leave," she whispered. "Go somewhere else. Somewhere people wouldn't judge us for being together." Swift Hawk dismounted and approached her horse, looking up at her with an expression of mingled tenderness and sadness. "There is no such place," he said gently. "Not yet. Perhaps not in our lifetime. Then we make our own place," she insisted, sliding from her saddle to stand before him. "My father did. Why can't we? Your father is a respected rancher with wealth and influence. I am the bravest, most honorable man I've ever known," she interrupted fiercely. "The man I love." The words hung in the air between them. Emma hadn't planned to declare herself so boldly, but now that she had spoken, she felt only certainty. Swift Hawk stood perfectly still, his dark eyes reflecting the last glimmers of sunset. Then, with deliberate slowness, he reached out and took her hands in his. "I've tried not to love you," he said, his voice low and intense. "I've told myself 100 reasons why I should keep my distance, but when I am with you, those reasons fall away like leaves in the wind." Emma's heart soared at his words. "Then stop fighting it," she whispered, stepping closer. "Stop fighting us." His hands released hers to frame her face with exquisite gentleness. "If I kiss you now," he murmured, "there will be no going back for me. Are you certain this is what you want?" In answer, Emma rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Swift Hawk's arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him. Emma felt as though something long coiled inside her had finally been set free, her heart beating wildly against his. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "You are the sky to my earth," he whispered, repeating the words that had haunted her. "Vast and beautiful and now impossibly within reach." Emma smiled, tears of joy pricking her eyes. "Not impossible, just difficult. And worth every struggle." They stood embraced as darkness settled around them, the future uncertain but their feelings undeniable. Finally, reluctantly, Swift Hawk stepped back. "We must return to the ranch," he said. "I need to speak with the lieutenant, offer what help I can." "Will you be safe?" Emma asked anxiously. "Your father will ensure it," he replied with confidence. "And once this matter is resolved, we will speak to him together, about us." The thought filled Emma with both hope and trepidation. He might not understand at first. Then we will help him understand. If he truly loves you, he will want your happiness above all else. They rode back toward the ranch side by side, their horses close enough that their legs occasionally brushed against each other. With each touch, Emma felt the reality of what had happened and what was yet to come more deeply. The ranch was quiet when they arrived, though lights burned in the main house and at the soldiers' camp. Swift Hawk accompanied Emma to the stables to unsaddle their horses. "Go inside now," he said softly. "I will speak with your father and the lieutenant. Promise me you'll be careful." He nodded, then surprised her with another swift, tender kiss. "Sleep well, Emma Vaughan. Dream of our future." Emma watched him walk toward the house, her heart full to bursting with love and anxiety. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. That certainty carried her through the night and into the uncertain days that followed. The next week passed in a whirlwind of activity. Swift Hawk led the cavalry detachment to track the raiding party, confirming that they were indeed Comanche warriors from far north. With his guidance, the soldiers recovered most of the stolen livestock and captured 2 of the raiders, though the others escaped back across the territory line. His success earned him the respect of Lieutenant Miller and even reluctant acknowledgement from some of the local ranchers, including Sheriff Wilson. Harold Parker remained suspicious, but without support from the others, his accusations lost momentum. Throughout this time, Emma and Swift Hawk found only brief moments alone together, a passing touch of hands when no one was looking, meaningful glances across the dining table, when he was invited to eat with the family, whispered conversations in the stables or garden. These stolen moments sustained them while they waited for the right time to approach Samuel. That moment came sooner than expected. One evening, Samuel called Emma into his study. She entered to find Swift Hawk already there, standing straight-backed near the window. "Close the door, Emma," her father said, his expression unreadable. She obeyed, heart pounding. Had they been discovered? Was her father angry? "I've asked Swift Hawk to consider taking on additional responsibilities here at the ranch," Samuel began, surprising her. "With the rustlers and raiders dealt with, I'm thinking of expanding our operation. New pastures to the north, maybe a breeding program for better stock. I'll need someone I trust to oversee those areas." Emma glanced at Swift Hawk, who remained impassive. "That sounds wonderful, father," she said cautiously. "It would mean building another house," Samuel continued. "Can't expect him to live in that scout's cabin if he's taking on management duties. Nothing fancy, mind you, but comfortable enough for a family man." At this, Swift Hawk's composure faltered slightly. "Mr. Vaughan," Samuel held up a hand. "Let me finish, son. I'm not blind, nor am I a fool. I see the way you look at my daughter and the way she looks at you." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "Father, I said let me finish," Samuel repeated, though his tone remained even. "I've had some time to think on this matter. At first, I won't lie, I was troubled. Not because of who you are, Swift Hawk, but because of the difficulties you'd both face. This territory isn't kind to mixed couples." He rose from his desk and walked to the window, looking out at the ranch that had been his life's work. "But then, I remembered something my Rebecca told me once. She said, Samuel, the heart knows no boundaries that matter." She was right, as she usually was. Samuel turned to face them both. "I loved your mother more than my own life, Emma. I won't stand in the way of you finding that kind of love, no matter what others might think or say." Tears sprang to Emma's eyes. "You mean you approve?" "I mean I want your happiness," Samuel clarified. "And if this man is the one who brings you that happiness, then yes, I approve, though I expect him to do right by you in all ways." Swift Hawk stepped forward, his face solemn but his eyes alight with emotion. "Mr. Vaughan, I love your daughter with all that I am. I vow to protect her, provide for her, and cherish her all the days of my life." Samuel nodded, satisfied. "Then that's settled." He looked between them, a hint of a smile finally softening his weathered features. "I reckon we'll have a wedding to plan." Emma rushed to embrace her father, tears flowing freely now. "Thank you," she whispered over her shoulder. Samuel met Swift Hawk's gaze. "Make her happy," he said simply. "That's all I ask." "I will," Swift Hawk promised, "with everything I have." The news of their engagement spread quickly through the ranch and beyond. Reactions were mixed, as expected. Martha beamed with approval, while Jackson and most of the hands offered cautious congratulations. Some of the neighboring ranchers withdrew their association, while others, influenced by Samuel's standing in the community, maintained cordial if reserved relations. Emma found she cared little for the opinions of those outside their immediate circle. Her world had expanded and contracted simultaneously, expanded to include dreams of a future with the man she loved, contracted to focus on what truly mattered rather than social expectations. Swift Hawk moved into the main house temporarily while the new cabin was being built. He and Samuel spent long hours discussing ranch operations, with the older man clearly grooming his future son-in-law for partnership. Emma watched their growing rapport with joy, seeing her father recognize the intelligence and capability that had drawn her to Swift Hawk from the beginning. As autumn deepened toward winter, preparations for the wedding accelerated. They planned a simple ceremony for early December, before the worst of the winter weather. Emma wore her mother's wedding dress, altered by Martha's skilled hands to fit her slimmer frame. Swift Hawk, at Samuel's insistence, ordered a proper suit from San Antonio, though he kept his hair in the traditional Apache style, a visible symbol of his heritage that he refused to abandon. The ceremony took place on the ranch, with Reverend Thomas from Wallace officiating. Only close friends attended, those who had demonstrated acceptance of the union. Jackson stood as Swift Hawk's witness, while Martha proudly accompanied Emma. As they exchanged vows under the vast Texas sky, Emma looked into the eyes of the man who had once seemed so mysterious and now was the center of her world. Swift Hawk spoke his vows in a clear, strong voice, then added words in his mother's language that he translated for all to hear. "You are the sky to my earth, vast and beautiful and now within reach. Our spirits are joined as the horizon joins what is above and below, inseparable and eternal." There were tears in more than one pair of eyes as they sealed their union with a kiss. Samuel Vaughan watched with bittersweet joy, seeing in his daughter's radiant face the echo of his beloved Rebecca. The new cabin was completed just before Christmas, a comfortable 4-room structure positioned on a rise overlooking a small creek. Swift Hawk had insisted on building much of it himself, working alongside the ranch's carpenter. The result was a unique blend of traditional ranch architecture and elements of Apache design, particularly in the central hearth and the covered porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Their first winter as husband and wife passed in a bubble of domestic bliss, insulated from the occasional challenges they faced when venturing into town. Emma found in Swift Hawk a partner who respected her mind as much as he cherished her heart, who discussed books and ideas with the same enthusiasm he showed for ranch work and tracking. For his part, Swift Hawk discovered in Emma a woman whose strength matched his own, a woman unafraid to stand beside him in the face of prejudice, whose love created a sanctuary in a world that often regarded him with suspicion. Spring brought new beginnings. The ranch expanded as planned, with Swift Hawk overseeing the northern pastures and implementing innovative breeding techniques he had learned during his time with the cavalry. Samuel watched with pride as his son-in-law's influence gradually transformed the Vaughan Ranch into one of the most progressive operations in the territory. By summer, Emma had news of her own to share. On a warm June evening, she and Swift Hawk sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. "I visited Dr. Fenton in Wallace today," she said, taking his hand in hers. He turned to her, concern crossing his features. "Are you unwell?" "Quite the opposite." Emma smiled, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a child, Daxie, in winter." Swift Hawk's expression transformed, wonder replacing concern. "A child," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "Our child. The beginning of our legacy," she said softly. "A child of both worlds who will know love without boundaries." He gathered her into his arms, his joy too profound for words. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they remained embraced, the promise of their future growing between them. The news delighted Samuel, who immediately began planning expansions to their cabin and talking of the education his grandchild would receive. "The best of both traditions," he declared. "Apache wisdom and modern learning." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall. Emma continued to help with the ranch accounts and correspondence, while Swift Hawk's protective instincts intensified. He began teaching her more about his mother's people, their stories, traditions, and beliefs, so their child would know this essential part of their heritage. On a snowy December morning, almost exactly a year after their wedding, Emma gave birth to a son. They named him Thomas Samuel, honoring both Swift Hawk's father, whose Apache name had been Tama, and Emma's father. The boy had Swift Hawk's dark eyes and Emma's determined chin, a perfect blending of their features. As Swift Hawk held his son for the first time, tears glistening in his eyes, he whispered to Emma, "You have given me what I never thought possible, a family, a home, a place where I truly belong." "We made it together," she reminded him, reaching up to touch his face. "Just as we'll make our future together, one day at a time." Samuel Vaughan, now a doting grandfather, pronounced the boy a true Vaughan with just enough Apache fire to make him interesting. His acceptance of his grandson was complete and unquestioning, setting an example that gradually influenced others in the community. As young Thomas grew from infant to toddler, and then to a curious, energetic boy, the Vaughan Ranch continued to prosper. Swift Hawk's management innovations proved so successful that neighboring ranchers began to consult him, setting aside old prejudices in favor of practical results. Emma established a small school on the ranch for Thomas and the children of their workers, teaching alongside her other duties. 5 years after Thomas's birth, they welcomed a daughter, Rebecca Sky, named for Emma's mother and the Apache word for sky, a constant reminder of Swift Hawk's poetic declaration of love years before. By the time Thomas was 10, the world around them had begun to change. New settlers arrived with more progressive views. The railroad brought increased commerce and connections to the wider world, and the isolation that had once defined ranch life gradually diminished. These changes brought both opportunities and challenges. Swift Hawk, now officially a partner in the Vaughan Ranch, found himself increasingly respected for his business acumen rather than viewed as an outsider. Emma's school grew to include children from neighboring properties. becoming known for its innovative approach that incorporated both traditional and native perspectives. Samuel, now in his 70s but still active, watched with quiet satisfaction as the seeds he had planted, both literal and figurative, flourished under the care of his daughter and son-in-law. The ranch that had once been his solitary dream had become the foundation for something larger. A family bridging cultures, a community slowly learning acceptance, a future different from but no less valuable than the one he had originally envisioned. One summer evening, 15 years after Emma and Swift Hawk first declared their love, the extended Vaughan family gathered on the porch of the main house. Thomas, now a handsome young man of 14 with his father's tracking skills and his mother's love of books, entertained them with a story he'd written. 10-year-old Rebecca, who had inherited her grandfather's head for business along with her parents' determination, kept detailed notes on the family's expanding horse breeding program. As the sun set in a blaze of color, Swift Hawk took Emma's hand, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over their years together. "Still beautiful," he murmured. "The sky of my world." Emma leaned against his shoulder, watching their children, her father, and the ranch hands who had become family gathered in contentment. "We made something wonderful here," she said softly. "Something that will last." "Against all odds," he agreed. "No," Emma corrected with a smile. "With love, there were never any odds against us, only paths we hadn't yet discovered." Swift Hawk gazed at the family they had created, at the life they had built together despite every obstacle. "You were right," he acknowledged. "The heart knows no boundaries that matter." As darkness fell and stars emerged above the Texas landscape, the Vaughan family remained together on the porch, their conversations and laughter a testament to the power of love to transcend differences and create something new and beautiful from disparate traditions. For Emma and Swift Hawk, the journey that had begun with cautious meetings beside a hidden pool had led to a life richer and more fulfilling than either had dared to imagine, a life where sky and earth met not as separate elements, but as essential parts of the same magnificent whole.